I was basically just walking in the park, felt really dizzy and collapsed to the ground. I freaked out because nothing like that had ever happened to me before. So I just went home. I climbed into bed and I stayed there for 3 years straight.
Rosie, a warm welcome back to the Face Yoga Expert podcast. How are you today?
Thank you so much. I'm really well, extremely happy that the sun is shining.
I know, exactly. Spring is coming, which is amazing. And it's exciting to have you back on the show because I was looking at last time you came on. And I believe it was September 2020. And I think that was episode 11 of the Face Yoga Expert podcast. And now we're like, goodness knows, 280, something like that.
Feels like 10,000 years ago, but wow.
Literally, I know.
Oh, what have we been doing?
I know. Well, we've been through a pandemic. That's what we've been doing. And jokes aside, I know you've been doing a lot. I mean, one of the most exciting things you've been doing over the last few years is you have written a book.
I have written my book, Burnout's a Bitch. I think I've got a copy here somewhere.
Yes, show us. Amazing.
I mean, it's honestly been a bit of a whirlwind since we last spoke. I launched the book, Burnout's a Bitch, which has done really, really well. I think the title is the thing that's kind of grabbed everybody's attention. But yeah, it did really well. And I've had such great, reviews and feedback from it. And since then, I've been doing loads and loads of sort of how to not burn out talks and lots of mental wellbeing workshops. And I'm launching something really exciting in October this year. I don't think you know. Did you know about it?
No.
Yeah. So maybe I'll share that with you now. I've been working super hard. I'm basically launching the UK's first mental wellbeing festival.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called Go Mental, and it's 3 days before World Mental Health Day on October the 7th. So it takes place in central London, and it's kind of like it's not a full day, it's just a half day of, wherever you are in your mental wellbeing journey, we've got you covered. It's everything from keynote speakers, Q&A panelists, inspirational talks, food and mood demos, yoga. So the whole point is to basically make everybody's mental wellbeing journey easier and to reduce suicide rates. So I have to let you guys all know where that is and the tickets. And it's not ready yet, but we're going to be launching the website in about 2 weeks' time.
Wow. Congratulations, Rosie. I mean, yes, that is a lot, but the people that you'll be helping whilst you do that is amazing. And the awareness that you'll be raising, which I know is really your passion. And anyone that doesn't know your story or didn't listen all those years ago to our first episode, maybe you could just give a very brief synopsis about your journey, that horrendous day in the park that really was life-changing for you, in both a positive and a negative way, I guess. Maybe if you could just share that briefly.
Gosh, it was such a long time ago now. So, nearly 9 years ago now, my love. On March the 6th, 2014, I was basically just walking in the park, felt really dizzy and collapsed to the ground. I freaked out because nothing like that had ever happened to me before. So I just went home. I climbed into bed and I stayed there for 3 years straight. And I was completely paralyzed with exhaustion. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't work, couldn't exercise. I was so exhausted. And, at my worst, I couldn't even lift my head off the pillow. So I went to the doctors and asked them to run some bloods on me just to find out what was going on. And they were just like, there's nothing wrong. You're just depressed. Here's some antidepressants. So I went home, climbed back into bed and burst into tears. And, and I slept and I slept and I slept. And no amount of sleep was making me feel better. And I knew it wasn't depression. It was just that level of exhaustion I'd never ever experienced before. So I just did a ton of reading, loads of research, went to see loads of other health practitioners, and eventually, after about a year, I got diagnosed with severe burnout. And you get burnout when your plate is already full, but you keep on adding to it. And I missed all the warning signs. I thought I was superwoman. I was working at the speed of light, said yes to everything. I'm very much that perfectionist, overachiever, A-type personality, which is what burnout tends to sort of go for. But yeah, it was honestly the hardest thing I've ever had to do is go through burnout. And those 3 years in my bed all alone was very, very difficult. It got very dark. It was I had some very dark moments, and I didn't want to be alive anymore. And my twin sister basically flew back from Hong Kong. She was living there at the time, and she moved in with me and was my lifeline and basically saved me. So it took me about 4 years to get back on my feet. I had to change everything. I changed my diet, my mindset, and my lifestyle. And I'm 100% recovered today, and I'm so grateful because when I talk to people about on reflection, I just can't believe how sick I was. I remember I was so exhausted. I had to crawl to the bathroom on my knees, on my arms, on my knees, on my legs. It was just, if I made it out of bed to the sofa, that was a success. I was absolutely debilitated. And that's what stress can do. That's what too much stress does to the body, head to toe. And, physically it got me, mentally it got me. And that's what happens when we experience too much stress and we don't look after ourselves. So yeah, be careful, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I've heard your story many times, but it still gives me sort of goosebumps when I listen to it, particularly the part about your twin sister coming over. I just think there's something so wonderful about that, and how she was such a sort of a pivot point to you changing and making a difference. And also, as you well know, I've got a similar story. Mine was sort of 20 years ago now, but I had ME for about 18 months, and same thing, very much bedridden, and talking about sort of crawling to the bathroom, even just thinking, how am I going to go for a wee today because I can't lift my head off the pillow. I mean, literally. I know, exactly. And I think when you get to that lowest low, the only way is up, and you have to reassess everything. And I know that that's what you did. That's definitely what I did as well. And I mean, I think what's important to firstly talk about is just, and I know we talked about this in the last episode, but I think it's important just to talk about it a little bit, is the key ways that you did make those lifestyle changes and how you did do that. And then we'll go back to actually looking at how we can prevent this. I know last time we talked a lot about burnout, but perhaps we'll lean more towards overwhelm today. I think that might be a nice sort of distinction to make. So let us know a little bit about sort of how you did overcome such a chronic illness.
So I think the first thing I did, I changed my diet.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, even as a nutritionist at the time, my diet was shocking. I was running on empty, to be honest with you. I was living on chicken and green tea and was over exercising. That was unintentional. I thought I was being healthy, but I really had to overhaul my diet. So I had to consume more calories. I had to make sure I was eating protein at every minute snack to balance my blood sugar levels so that I wasn't dipping. Caffeine was a killer. So I was drinking copious amounts of green tea, 10 cups a day. So I
Wow.
got rid of that. And I promise you, as soon as I cut the caffeine out, my energy went from there to there. It was significantly different. And to be honest, whenever I put a client on a caffeine-free diet, yeah, they go through an initial die-off sort of phase for 5 days. They feel a bit rubbish, but they feel so much more energized afterwards. And I was taking a lot of supplements. I mean, I ran a lot of tests on myself, and I was very deficient in a lot of nutrients, particularly magnesium, sodium, potassium. So I did a lot of adrenal support. I was taking 40 supplements a day
Wow.
at one point, but I had
Mhm.
to, because like you say, you're so depleted and you just get to a point where you will do anything because your pain point is so high. You're just like, let me at it. I'll do whatever I can, because energy is everything. When you don't have your energy, you don't really have a life. So I changed my diet. I really had to remove my stressors, so eliminate them, identify what they were at the first place, get clear on what it was that was zapping my energy, who was zapping my energy. And in all honesty, as soon as I got rid of the toxic relationship that I was in, I flourished. And well, I noticed that I flourished more and my energy significantly improved. So that's really key. And I always say that, your life will always be 100 miles per hour if you don't slow down. And if you're adding fuel to the fire and your stressors are on top of you all the time, it's like you're just adding the flames are just going to get bigger and bigger. So you've got to sort of swoop in and look inwardly and think who and what is zapping your energy. So that was really a big step for me. And then my mindset, I had to stop playing the victim mentality. Why me? Why is this happening? It's not fair. Everybody else is doing well and smashing it. And I had really a lot of the time I would compare myself to everybody, which was so detrimental. And my negative thoughts were very damaging to my recovery. So I had to do a lot of meditation, take myself away from the environment that I got sick, and to make all those changes. So it was really diet. A whistle stop tour of my recovery is I changed my diet, my mindset, and my lifestyle. And that's really what the book is all about. It's covering those three holistic points. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I know. And you make it sound so easy there, but actually it's such a journey. And I think, I did exactly the same thing to overcome my ME and, completely 100% recover from it. However, what I do now, still 20 years on, is I still daily do so many of those things that I use to recover, because I think the important message is, when you get to that lowest low, you can get yourself out of it, but it's then how you maintain it, how you carry on over the next few years, the next few decades. So I know I couldn't drink 5 cups of coffee a day. I know I couldn't probably even be employed by somebody else where I had to work on. I always say I'd get sacked from a regular job because actually I like to have time. It doesn't mean that I don't work hard, because I absolutely do. I'm busy, I've got 2 kids as well. But I like to work my own hours. And if I know that I'm particularly tired one day or my body's giving me little warning signs, I can pull back a little bit. And I know that's not possible for everyone, but that's just an example for me. But just 2 examples, that caffeine, but there's 100 examples I could give. And are you the same? Daily still you're doing those things?
You're absolutely right, and I call it like a new baseline. So I used to be really sick, but then now I'm at a new baseline where there's all those points that I change, and they're always sort of on the undercurrent. So my sleep hygiene is pretty strong now. I'm very regular with my sleep wake cycle. I'm taking supplements, not 40 a day, but I still take the ones that I need every day, every morning. And it's about managing the expectations. And I'm like you, if I start to feel like I'm a bit sort of dizzy or like a little bit, overwhelmed, I'll get out of London. And I'm like, right, I need to go away and recharge. And I'm very good at saying no now. I'm very good at like kind of being like arm's length, setting boundaries, saying no. I used to be I wasn't very operational in that, but that was a learned behavior. I had to learn that. So yeah, 100% doing all of these things just like you.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, because as I listen to you talk about that, I realize how grateful I am to be able to live this lifestyle and how much I actually enjoy living this healthy, balanced lifestyle. But I think there's probably about 5% of the time where I still have a level of frustration where I think, almost that attitude, like we talked, like you mentioned about the victim mindset, where you look at somebody else and say, well, how come they can drink 4 glasses of wine a night? Or how come they can work 80-hour weeks? But that is literally 5% of the time. The other 95% of the time, I know it's my sole purpose to live like this. I know that what makes me happy is what makes me healthy. And it's also what allows me to help other people. I'm leading by example, and I'm living this every day in order to share this with other people. But I sometimes do get that little bit of frustration. Do you ever get that?
I do. And it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast yesterday and they were talking about, how everybody thinks that there's this perfect work-life balance that's so achievable and that one day they'll get their work all perfect and their home life all perfect. But it's not about striving for perfection. It's about striving for balance. And I just thought that was really profound. And it's like with the diet, I always say to my clients, follow the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of the time, you feed your body, you give it what it needs. And then 20%, yeah, you have the glass of wine, you have the piece of chocolate cake. So it is about, it's about not fighting against yourself. Obviously, living a life that's in your core values so that, you're not feeling miserable and you're sort of playing into the right values at that time in your life. But it's also about not being perfect and finding that balance, which is sort of so overused, but it's so profound.
It's so true. And I think sometimes those simple bits of advice are the most effective and the most powerful. Absolutely. And let's go back to talking a little bit about overwhelm, because burnout is often the stage where it's almost those alarm bells ringing. And of course, it's incredibly important to listen to those alarm bells. But often the earlier stages of that is that feeling of overwhelm. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of those signs of overwhelm.
I think that feeling frazzled is one of them, where you and not having the emotional bandwidth to be able to deal with anything. Fatigue is one, so mental fatigue, brain fog, no brain energy, difficulty sleeping. These are the sort of classic signs and symptoms. But I think that some of the best ways to deal with overwhelm is to take regular breaks. Their studies suggest that if you take regular breaks throughout the day, your memory is better, your cognitive function is sharper, your focus is much better. So I always advocate when I'm doing, public speaking or one-to-one clients is the importance of taking regular breaks. Because I see so many people that just go, 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 go. And they think that, being busy is a badge of honor, but busyness is just a consequence of your choices. And so the alternative is just to go, 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 no breaks. You come home, you go to the gym, you haven't eaten much, and then, you're just going to feel burnt out and exhausted. So I'm talking about regular breaks throughout the day. And there's a great personal development coach called Brendan Burchard, and he talks about how you should set an alarm on your phone every 50 minutes or every 60 minutes every hour. And it's literally just a sort of 60-second step up, get outside the room, grab a cup of tea, reset the intention and go back in. And when I do that, I find that my energy, and again, everybody else that I teach this to, their energy is so much better. They've still got like a wag in their tail. They've got a spring in their step at the end of the day, just because they've been aware of taking those regular breaks at intervals for the day. So that's probably one of the first tips. And I would say that taking time out is really key to preventing burnout and dealing with overwhelm. There's this really famous saying, you can't recover in the same place that you got sick. So, changing your environment is absolutely key. And like, for example, last week I had a very difficult week. It was very challenging emotionally. And I was just like, I need to get out of London. London is sort of, you have a love-hate relationship with it, don't you, sometimes? And so I'm very aware and being tuned into when I need to take time out. I call it green time, where you're literally giving the adrenal glands that time to reset, recharge, recalibrate. And in my book, I talk about the traffic light system, where, you've got the red activities that are like go, 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 all day work, full day events with no breaks, going to do like 2 workouts in the day, that kind of thing. And then you've got the amber activities, which are a little bit calmer. So that's like running errands, seeing friends for lunch, doing the dishes. And then you've got the green time, like walking in the park, in nature, having a hot bath, doing yoga, doing meditation. And I think that, allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to do a bit of green time when you can, if you can, like 30 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, just anything to, prioritize you and give yourself that self-care, because that's one of the most effective ways to deal with overwhelm, because we're going to get stressed. We're going to leave the house. We're going to be bombarded. It is going to be stressful. But if we don't mitigate those responses by healing our bodies, feeding us with the right foods, taking time out, resting, having mini breaks, green time, all these things, then we're gonna feel too overwhelmed and not be able to cope. So getting the diet right is obviously key as well. There's sensible tips like making sure that you're eating around the clock, that you're eating adequate calories, that you're not overdoing it with the sugar, that you are using caffeine but wisely. When you drink too much caffeine, you get that jittery feeling, the shaky feeling. So it's about making sure you're not having too much caffeine in the afternoon, and supporting the body with supplements as well. I run a lot of tests on my clients, and there's so many deficiencies that right now they're rife. Magnesium deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, iron deficiency. So just making sure you're eating the right diet that's wholesome, packed with nutrients and nourishing. So I would say those are my tips on how to deal with overwhelm instantly.
Yes, I love those tips. And the traffic light system is wonderful as well. And ideally, what would you say sort of the percentage of sort of red, orange, and green time, during a week for sort of optimum health? What would you recommend?
That's a really good question. 100% green time.
Agreed.
I mean, I would probably say a little bit like I guess sort of 40. No, that's not. I would say 30% red,
Mhm. Yeah.
30% yellow, and 40% green. Does that add up?
Yeah.
Does that add up? I'm not very
Almost.
good.
Yeah, it does. Up to 100.
Big question, but yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
And I think really when it comes to that, it's really looking at, I guess, your lifestyle and going into your intuition a little bit, because there'll be some people who, actually maybe they're at the point where they do. I mean, we're joking about it, but 100% green time is what they need. Perhaps they are, at that alarm point, that emergency point where actually, you know, they are at complete burnout. Whereas other people, perhaps they've got the capacity to go red or orange, maybe for a few weeks or a few months. Maybe there's a big project. They know they've got the resilience. They've been looking after themselves in the lead up to that, and they can actually just blast it out for a little bit, but they need to actually maybe schedule that green time in for a bit afterwards. So I guess it's really so individual. I know it was a tricky question to ask you, but it's a really interesting one. And I'd love to know a little bit about your routine, particularly your morning routine. I know you're really keen on sort of setting your day up in a good way.
Oh, big time. I wake up. I've been waking up extremely early recently, which I love, like 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, and I have to do first tea
Mhm.
first, and then things. So I'll literally go make a big cup of green tea. I love it. I only have about 1 to 2 a day, but I'll have my tea, and I will get my journal. I've got like this prompting journal, which is it's like a sort of high performing journal where it prompts you, where there be like questions like, how do you want to feel today? Who needs you on your A game? How do you want to show up? Like at the end of the day, how do you want to feel? Or how will you know if the day's been successful if you feel like whatever, which emotion? So I write in that, and that just really sort of gets me ready mentally and physically, and sort of my brain is charged. It sets the framework up for a decent work day. And then I will either crack on with all of those things and kind of do a good 2-3 hours without any distractions, and then I'll get a bit itchy and want to probably go outside or go to the gym, so I'll do a quick workout, and then in the afternoons that's when I really do the sort of meetings, and I'll be sort of outbound and out the house, or filming or creating content or doing my talks. It's usually my talks are over lunchtime with all the
Mhm.
corporates I do. And then in the evenings, I'll make dinner, and it's very much self-care. There's a lot of self-care in the evenings, coming home, sort of making a healthy meal, reading my books. What else do I do? Light a candle. I do a lot of sort of mini spa facials because I'm old now.
You're not old at
I
all.
am. God. So yeah, that's just a typical day. And then at the weekends, I'm quite strict. I'm quite good at like when I burnt out, I had to set new boundaries, and I was like, I'm never going to work weekends again. So I'm very strict about not working Saturdays and Sundays. And I'll typically get out of London. So I try to sort of plan an adventure day on Sunday, and I'll just jump in my car and get out and get into nature. I think that I was talking to my therapist the other day, and one thing that your listeners might find interesting is about your core values and
Mhm.
what they really are, because you can have the perfect diet, you can sleep really well, exercise loads, love your family, have great support network, but if you're still coming home and just something isn't right, and you're just a little bit miserable or a little bit down, or it's your alignment. So it's all
Mhm.
about thinking about where are you at in your life, and are you playing into your core values today? So, and they always change, they shift. And I don't think people realize that your core values shift over time. So my old core values, for example, were, they used to be sort of financial security, inspiration, making an impact, success, reputation. But now they are so different. It's about kindness, generosity, nature, healing. And I'm just like, wow. And I realized that my life in London sort of mimics the old core values and not the new ones. So it's all about what are your core values, and are you living in alignment with them? So that's something else that because I see a lot of people who have burnt out, that they're overwhelmed because they've sort of gone down a path that was right at the time, but they've been on it for too long and it's not right anymore. And because their core values have shifted. So it is about doing the inner work, and thinking about what is it that you truly want, and are you in alignment with your core values today?
Absolutely. I think that's so important because we're always looking towards the future. I have this conversation with my husband probably every other day. He runs the business with me. And if he's ever doing too much or getting stressed, I always say, why are we doing this? You're doing this for your future of having freedom, wellness, abundance. Well, how about we make sure, and we do most days, but sometimes you can lose sight of this. How about we make sure that we're living with freedom and wellness and abundance now? Because actually, if you're working for 10 years' time or 20 years' time or 30 years' time, when you can have the freedom to go out for a walk when you want, when you can have, you know, the time and money to enable you to go and have a spa afternoon or to spend more time with your family. Well, actually, most of those things can be done now in this moment. And that's not about not working and not looking to the future. It is just about how can we live in alignment, exactly what you say, in alignment with those values today. And I think we often lose sight of why we're going at 100 miles an hour, like what is it we're trying to achieve. And I would say 9 times out of 10 we can achieve that exact thing at the moment. And usually we just want peace, we just want love, we just want joy, we just want happiness, we just want health. And that's what we're burning ourselves out to achieve. So actually stop burning ourselves out to achieve that, start doing that now. And yes, you know, it's wonderful to have goals, it's wonderful to have a purpose, and it's really important to have a future that we're excited about and looking forward to. But it is that it's going back to balance again, isn't it? You know, that's what it really is. Definitely.
A lot of people feel overwhelmed because they're chasing their tail and they're in this rat race. And I think the missing link quite often is they've not stopped to think inwardly about, you know, what their core values are. And one of my favorite questions that one of my coaches asked me ages ago was, what's the one thing that gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And if you can just anchor that, whatever it is, whether it's purpose, family, creativity. Mine is very much creativity. If I'm not creative every day, like I die inside, I get out of bed to inspire and to create. And if you just drop it to 2 words or 1 word, it'll just sort of align you and stop that whole circulating like whirlwind of your life, and just sort of set you up for, you know, in a sort of like in a bullet point kind of way.
Absolutely. And it also allows you to prioritize what you want to be doing throughout your day. And, you know, you talked about when you were recovering from your burnout, how you started to understand which people in your life were toxic and who you had to say no to. And that's so important, because I think many of us, particularly if we are empaths, if we're highly sensitive people, if we want to help other people, what we tend to do is lean much more towards saying yes, 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 because we want to help everybody. We want to make a difference to everybody. We want to be there for everybody. But actually, what I have noticed, and I don't know about you, but I've noticed over the years, when I've actually said quite a firm but fair no to people, that's actually helped and inspired those people more than I thought. I thought it would hurt them, frustrate them, irritate them. But most of the time, I have found that they've respected that decision. Either they've not thought much about it, or they've gone, wow, okay, so maybe I need to look at my life and start saying no to certain things and start being selfish in the positive way. That doesn't mean we can't be kind, loving people, but being selfish is actually, I think it's underrated, being selfish. And that sounds a silly thing to say, but actually being selfish is about thinking about what we need first. And then it's that oxygen mask first, isn't it? And then we're in a better place to actually help other people and make a difference.
I mean, one of my favorite quotes is learn to say no without explaining yourself. And it's probably very overused now, but it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, because you can't, it's that whole like the half empty cup analogy. You can't help anybody if your glass is half empty, right? It has to be half full or more. So yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. So yeah, absolutely, totally agree.
Definitely. And let's just, before we finish, I'd love to just briefly touch on, and we have talked about it a little bit, but caffeine, sugar, and alcohol. I feel like they can be trigger points for many people, and you'll be very familiar with this as a nutritionist. You know, soon as we start to actually talk about the things that for many of us can give us joy or be quite a significant part of our life. But I know for me, you know, going back all those years, 20 years ago, I completely gave up alcohol because I knew for me that intuitively felt like it was the most toxic thing for my body. And I've never drunk again since. I mean, that's just a personal choice. Yeah, that's just been a personal choice for me. I also don't drink any coffee or tea, but I do like dark chocolate, and I do like a hotel chocolat 85% in my lovely Velvetizer hot chocolate. So I do obviously sort of have treats. And sugar, I wish that I could say I was completely sugar free. Unfortunately, I'm not. I go through periods of time where I know, look, okay, I have to really cut down my sugar. And there's other times where I sort of go, okay, I can be a little bit more lenient on this and, you know, just enjoy a few days and have desserts because I'm away on holiday or whatever it might be. So that's what the balance that I found that really suits me. Is it what I always want to do? No. Is it what I know I need to do to be the best version of me? Yes. maybe you could talk about like what your balance is and also what you recommend to people who are at the stage of either overwhelm or burnout.
Wow, I love that. You've unpacked so much stuff. I mean, I'm like you. I've cut back significantly on alcohol. I mean, I wasn't a big drinker. I can't drink much because I'll have a glass of champagne and I'm drunk. But I notice like it's black and white. My anxiety goes when I don't drink. It's pretty severe when I do have alcohol, and not even that much. You know, alcohol is inflammatory. It robs vitamins and minerals from the body. It reduces serotonin the next day, so you feel low. So it's about being sensible, and that's certainly what I've done. And I've got to a point now where I'm just like, I just don't want to drink it anymore. Because I've got so much on my plate. I'd much rather have my productive edge, my competitive edge, and I find that alcohol just sort of slows me down, makes me sluggish, triggers the anxiety. So I'm much better now at saying no and just being like that. It doesn't work for me. So that's alcohol. Sugar's very difficult. They did a study a long time ago with rats, and the rats had in the cages. They had two options: to have constant supply of cocaine or constant supply of sugar. There was like a tap, and they could just run up and get whatever they wanted. They were more addicted to the sugar than the cocaine. It's addictive, and it's extremely difficult to give up, and it's everywhere. But you know, if you can cut it back, and again, it's the 80-20 rule. You know, 80% of the time, feed your body. I always say that every meal is an opportunity to feed or fail the body. So, but you know, as long as most of the time you're feeding your body, then have a piece of chocolate cake or dark chocolate, much better than obviously milk chocolate. But it's obviously sugar is very inflammatory in the body, and it affects so many things. And there's actually a lot of studies now coming out about how cutting back on sugar is super effective for mental illnesses. So things like they're actually reversing mental conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar, just by putting people on actually a ketogenic diet.
Wow.
Very high fat, very high protein, no sugar at all. And your body's burning ketones and using that, it's burning fat and producing ketones for energy rather than glucose. So I just think that's really, really profound. And I talk a lot about that in my mental wellbeing classes. But yeah, if you can cut back on sugar or just have it, you know, not every day, but just see it as a treat. I know it's hard, and swapping the refined sugary foods for the more natural sugar. If you are having a craving, have some fruit, you know, fresh fruit, and just 1 to 2 portions a day, and not go for the sweets. And then, so what was the other one?
Caffeine, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with 1 to 2 cups of coffee a day. It's a brilliant stimulant. It does create alertness, but if you're overwhelmed, you're feeling burnt out, you've got no energy, you're dragging yourself through the day, it's probably best to avoid caffeine, because temporarily it whips the adrenal glands. It's like giving them that fix, that like energy, but it's superficial energy. Over the long run, it does actually exhaust the adrenal glands, and we know that too much caffeine can actually trigger the release of cortisol into the bloodstream, and it can trigger anxiety and panic attacks. So it's about being smart, being sensible, and you've had too much caffeine when you get the shakes. That's your liver telling you that you don't have enough enzymes to break down the caffeine in coffee. So go for the caffeine-free alternatives. A little bit of green tea is fine. It's got many more antioxidants in it than green tea. Than the normal tea. Green tea's got like 3 times the amount of antioxidants than normal tea. So it's about swapping. When you take something out of that, it's about replacing it with something else. So I hope I've covered.
You've covered it so well. And actual final question I really want to ask you is, you always look so fabulous in your outfits, and I know that you're obviously a big fan of fashion. I'd love to know how, wearing amazing clothes or dressing up, how that positively affects your mental well-being, because I'm sure there's a connection for you of the two.
Oh my God, dresses are dopamine. That's what I always say. I am obsessed. From when I was a kid, my twin sister and I, we used to have dolls and play Barbies, and we wouldn't just play with them. We would make clothes. We would get fabric, cut things up, make dresses, and sew them up. And that's all we would do day in, day out. So it's been there, and it's a sort of new found energy that I have. I have to get up and dress up because it does release dopamine for me. I'm pretty sure it kind of, if I'm wearing an incredible dress, I feel incredibly confident and empowered. I feel like Superwoman, and it's kind of like dress up, show up, isn't it?
It is,
and it has a massive effect on a positive effect on on my outlook for the day, my mental well-being. And yeah, it makes me truly happy, but I'm obsessed.
I love that. And you must have really missed that when you were going through your burnout as well, because obviously I imagine for years and years you weren't getting dressed up at all.
No, and COVID as well. That
Yeah.
I don't think I wore a pair of heels. I don't think anybody did for years. But anyway, so yeah, happy that it's we're back to normal now. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Rosie. And if people would like to learn more about what you do and get your book, can you just share all that with us, please?
So I'm mostly on the gram. It's just Miss Nutritionist there. You guys can head over there. It'd be nice to connect. I'm always giving away free advice, but if you want to know more about Go Mental, then that's going to be announced a bit more sort of officially in about 2 weeks' time.
Wonderful. And your book, Burnout as Bitch, you can get that.
Yeah, sorry, that's available on Amazon as well. The link's in my bio on Instagram. So yeah, you can either Google that or just head over to Instagram and say hello.
Thank you, Rosie. It's a pleasure to chat to you as always. Really appreciate all your amazing advice.
You're so welcome. Have a fabulous day.
And you.